Welcome back to Hexo Game Insider. Today, we're going to be talking about none other than the game The Outlast Trials. When The Outlast Trials was first announced, a lot of people didn't know what to think. Outlast had always been a single-player, narrative-driven horror series. Then, Red Barrels comes out and says they're making a co-op, replayable Outlast game built around trials, progression, and systems. On paper, that sounds like something that shouldn't work. But somehow it does, and not just barely. It works in a way that makes people put dozens or even hundreds of hours into a game that is intentionally uncomfortable to play. The interesting question isn't, is it scary? Because that's obvious. The real question is why people keep coming back. To understand that, you have to look at how the game is designed. First, some context. The Outlast Trials was developed by Red Barrels, the same studio behind Outlast and Outlast 2. It launched in early access in May 2023 and released fully in March 2024. From the beginning, the developers were clear that this wasn't Outlast 3. It's a standalone experience set in the same universe, focused on replayability, co-op, and player-driven progression. Instead of telling a linear story, Trials puts you into the role of a test subject for the Murkoff Corporation during the Cold War. You're not uncovering their experiments, you're actively participating in them. That shift alone changes the tone of the experience. The disturbing part isn't just what happens in the trials, it's the framing. You're constantly being evaluated, graded, watched. The game reinforces the idea that pain and trauma are part of a process. That's not just narrative flavor, it's baked directly into the mechanics. Every run ends with a score. Performance matters, efficiency matters, survival matters. And that's where the addiction starts. Most horror games are about avoidance. You play once, you experience the fear, and you move on. Trials is structured more like a systems-driven game. The maps are reused, objectives rotate, difficulty modifiers change. The horror doesn't come from not knowing what's going to happen. It comes from being forced to execute under pressure. Players don't just get scared, they learn. They learn enemy patrol routes, they learn when to sprint and when to conserve stamina. They learn how to use rigs like stun, heal, blind, or barricade efficiently. They learn how to support teammates without getting caught themselves. Red Barrels talked during early access about wanting fear to come from decision-making, not randomness. That's exactly what Trials does. You're rarely killed because the game surprises you. You're killed because you made a bad call under stress. That's important because it creates a feedback loop. When you fail, you know why. When you succeed, it feels earned. The progression system reinforces that loop. Completing trials unlocks prescriptions, amps, cosmetics, and higher difficulties. None of these make you invincible. They just make you slightly better at surviving, slightly more efficient, slightly more confident. And confidence is dangerous in a horror game. The more confident you get, the more risks you take. The more risks you take, the more likely the game is to punish you. That push and pull keeps tension high, even after dozens of hours. Players regularly talk about how they're no longer jump scared, but still feel constant stress. That's not accidental. That's design. The enemies play a big role in this as well. Trials relies heavily on persistent AI threats rather than scripted scares. Enemies react to sound, light, and player behavior. They don't disappear just because you broke line of sight. They linger, they patrol, they punish mistakes slowly instead of instantly. That makes every action feel weighted. Sprinting isn't free, slamming a door isn't free, helping a teammate isn't free. Everything costs something, whether it's stamina, time, or exposure. And then there's co-op. Co-op fundamentally changes how horror works. Fear becomes shared, but so does responsibility. If a teammate goes down, you have to decide whether saving them is worth the risk to your run. The game doesn't force hero moments, it lets you fail socially. That's something players consistently point out. The most stressful moments aren't monster encounters, they're human decisions. Do you leave someone behind to protect your grade? Do you push the objective while someone distracts an enemy? Do you rush and risk everything, or play slow and risk running out of resources? The grading system amplifies this. Seeing a low grade after surviving something brutal feels worse than dying sometimes. Players will replay the same trial not because it scared them, but because they want to do it cleaner. That's competitive design layered on top of horror. And that's where the disturbing part quietly settles in. Over time, the environments don't shock you as much. The executions don't faze you the same way. What changes isn't the content, it's your tolerance. The game doesn't reward bravery, it rewards adaptation. Red Barrels has mentioned in interviews that Trials is about conditioning, and that theme applies just as much to the player as it does to the character. You're trained to endure, to optimize, to keep going. That's why people describe the game as exhausting but addictive. Not because it's fun in a traditional sense, but because it engages the same mental systems as high-stress competitive games, just filtered through horror. The Outlast Trials isn't addictive despite being disturbing. It's addictive because it turns discomfort into progress and fear into a skill you can improve. And once a game does that, it's hard to walk away from it without feeling like you could do better next time. If you care about how games are built, not just how they look on the surface, that's what this channel is for. I break down design, systems, and why certain games stick, across all genres. If that sounds like something you'd watch, subscribe. I'm Hexo. This is Game Insider.